On today's episode of Useless Thoughts, we tell you that you all need to calm down with your road rage. And also, is it really worth it to drive around for 10 minutes in a parking lot to try to find the perfect spot? Thank you for listening. Subscribe to this podcast if you'd like. Drop the small talk, and let's do this.
Sitting on top of the world, I don't know if you heard. I'm living it up, yeah, I ain't gonna stop, and I can't hear a word. Good vibes up in the air, and I got plenty to share. So come pick it up, there's tons to be got, and I'm spreading it everywhere. So go a little up and let it run amok. I'm telling your friends it's time to let the good times roll.
This is the Useless Thoughts Podcast, a place where no thought is too random and no topic is too pointless. Let's have some real conversation. Good morning, afternoon, or evening to you all. Depends on when you're listening. You can accept any of those greetings. But welcome to the fourth episode of Useless Thoughts. We're still in Season 1, Episode 4, and I'm thankful to you for listening to this episode. We have enjoyed the first three, and I'm trying to get a little more regular with when I post these. I do apologize for that. I do all the producing and editing and yada 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 for each episode, so it takes a little bit longer sometimes, but trying to release these weekly. So appreciate your patience and appreciate you listening as well. Want to remind you of the email address for the show. That's uselessthoughtspodcast@gmail.com. All one word, uselessthoughtspodcast@gmail.com. Give me your feedback, give me your questions, give me your ideas for shows, give me your opinions on podcast platforms that you use that is not on yet. But also, if you want to help the show, you can subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. You can rate it on there, leave a review on there so that more people, apparently that helps other people know that the podcast exists. Or you can just tell people word of mouth, share it on Facebook, Twitter, or however you want to do it. If you like the show, tell about it. If you don't like the show, then I would prefer that you didn't tell anyone about it because you're probably going to tell them not to listen. So if you don't like the show, don't tell anyone about it. But if you do like the show, tell everybody about it. I think that's good practice. So on to what we came to talk about for today's episode. I freely admit I'm not as passionate about this topic as I am the previous three episodes, but nonetheless, it's a useless thought, so it's worth considering. For this topic of road rage, I first say all of you need to calm down. Out on the road, the majority of you get way too mad at the slightest things, and we all need to calm down. Here's the general idea of what gets people mad. You know, you're driving on we'll just use the interstate as an example. You're driving along in the interstate in the middle lane or the right lane, and you're just cruising along whatever speed you are. And then you're coming up on an exit that you're not getting off of, but then all of a sudden out of nowhere, some car comes screaming across 3 lanes from your left to cut right in front of you because that's the exit they need to get off of, and they didn't realize it, and that, you know, they cut you off and you have to maybe tap the brakes because they cut in front of you to get to that exit. The majority of you fly off the handle at this kind of thing, and I'm here to tell you, calm down. The majority of you, anytime someone messes up like that on the road, you go crazy. So you may be telling yourself, well, you know, there's a lot of bad drivers out there, and you know, it's not my fault that everyone is so bad, and yes, I just wish people were better drivers. Well, let me tell you, all of you think that you're the good driver. Have you ever noticed that? Everyone thinks that they're the good driver, and everyone else on the road is the bad drivers. So it's crazy that apparently everyone thinks that everyone else is the bad driver, but guess what? All those drivers think that they're the good driver, and you're the bad driver. So we have a world full of everyone thinking that they're a good driver, and let me tell you, all of you are mediocre drivers. If any of you were a good driver, some of you would know how to use a median, but none of you know how to use one. So that's why I say that all of you are mediocre drivers. None of you are as good as you think you are, and the other drivers aren't as bad as you think that they are. Everyone is pretty much a mediocre driver. So first of all, let's get that out of the way. Second of all, the things that we get mad at other people for doing on the roads, the cutting in front of us, the not going when the light turns green quick enough, the not yielding correctly, or not turning right on red, or not using a roundabout correctly, or whatever it is, all these things that we get mad at other drivers about, we have done the exact same thing at some point in time. And here's the difference. The difference is when you do it, when you're the one that's in an unfamiliar place and you're in the far left lane and you realize, maybe you had an appointment and you're at Disney World or something and you got to be there at a certain time to see something, and if you miss the exit, then you would miss what you came for. And so you basically tell yourself, well, it's now or never. And you say, I know I'm going to tick everybody off, but I'm just going to cut everybody off to get over to this exit. See, in your head, you're not a bad driver there. You just did what had to be done. And you don't really think about the people behind you that are like, oh, that person's probably a terrible driver. See, in your case, you knew that you had a reason to do it. You knew why you did it, and it was justified in your head. But when other people do it and you're slightly inconvenienced, now all of a sudden that person's a terrible driver. They didn't have a reason to do it. It wasn't justified because you're now on the opposite end of it. So all of this ideas of the other people are the bad drivers, I'm the good driver, we need to calm down. This whole road rage thing, we need to keep it in perspective, realize that maybe there was a reason for them. Maybe that them doing that was just the circle of life, that sometimes I have to do things that maybe inconvenience others and cause them to break, and sometimes people are going to do that to me. And we just realize it's a reciprocal world out there, and maybe if we drive a little calmer, we could deal with it a little bit better. But the other side of it is just the road rage, that if you get mad at every single inconvenience, how much time are you taking off of your life with the anger? You get so mad at the time that someone wasted, how they slowed you down so you don't get to work 30 seconds faster than you would have because you had to brake a little bit on your commute to work. Well, all that time that you would have saved, you pretty much have now ruined that by you've saved even less time because you've cut years off your life with how angry you get. The anger that some of you get on the road is an anger of which I've never even gotten mad about in my entire life. I've never risen to the level of anger that I have seen some people get on the roads. And I'm not here to act like I'm some perfect angel. I get mad on the roads too. So I'm telling this to myself. This is basically a PSA to us all, that stop getting so mad on the roads and stop thinking that you're the good thing and everyone else is the problem. Maybe we're just all part of the problem. We all need to be a little more calm, and maybe we'd all be a little bit better drivers too if we calm down a little bit. And somewhat in line with this topic of road rage, I want to talk about speed limits for a second. One, shout out to all the speed limit signs that don't end in a 5 or a 0. Every now and then you'll see like the 28 miles an hour or 42 miles an hour. Shout out to those jurisdictions that do that and aren't tied to everything has to be an interval of 5 or a multiple of 5 or 10 because, who decided that? Why do we have to set our alarms at 7 o'clock or 7:05 or 7:10? Why can't we set an alarm for 7:02? But I digress. But on to speed limits. I freely admit I am a speed limit driver. I think that it's just, the roads were designed for a certain speed limit. So it's better for that. It's I can slow down quicker if I'm not going over the speed limit. So hopefully preventing accidents and limiting the severity of those accidents. So all in all, I think that I'm just called to in the scripture to follow the government and the laws that are in place. So I am a speed limit driver. But in spite of all of those, what I find interesting about the speed limit is, especially like in town, when you're driving where there's a bunch of stoplights, it's interesting to see if you're driving the speed limit and someone else is wanting to drive as fast as they possibly can. It's interesting to see how often that if you just drive the speed limit, because of all the lights and the stop signs and the traffic control, you see that person, you may 3 miles up ahead, you come to a stoplight and that person that drove past you at twice your speed is sitting there right beside you. And so they didn't make it to their destination any quicker than you did, and they drove a lot riskier. I've always found that's slightly fascinating. And I say that just to say that I would be interested to see a study of how much time is saved by driving 25 miles an hour over the speed limit versus just driving the speed limit. And just even if it does save 30 minutes on a 4-hour trip, why do we have to be in such a hurry everywhere we go. It just seems like anytime that we get behind the wheel of a car, we have to see, it's like we're stressed out the whole time and got to see what is the fastest possible route that we can get there. I mean, if we have to drive to work 200 times a year, if we don't have to be stressed out and trying to get there in as quick of a time frame as we possibly can every time. Maybe if we were a little more laid back, a little more relaxed while we were driving, maybe there'd be less wrecks. I don't know. I have no proof of this. I say all of this to say, let's calm down, not get so mad on the roads, and realize that we're all there. We're all driving these things that can kill any of us at any time if we don't operate them carefully, and realize to not get so angry when we're operating one of these things. Show some care for each other on the road, and let's act like we care about the safety of not only us and the people riding with us, but the safety of those around us. So, long story short, let's calm down with the road rage. If you're looking to buy a home and need some help with your mortgage needs, contact my friend Brad Smith. You can go to his website, bradsmithloans.com, and see all his information there. And that will have all his work phone number, his cell phone number, his email address, a form where you can fill out all the information that you need to do there. And Brad Smith can help you. He knows his stuff, and he is there with First Bank Mortgage to cover all your information. Again, that's Brad Smith. It's member FDIC, equal housing lender, First Bank Mortgage, NMLS 472433. Just go to bradsmithloans.com, reach out to Brad, and he can help you from there. For today's show, we are sponsored by someone that we are so excited to present to you, and that is rooms that have ceiling fans in them. This sponsor has been such a key contributor to the show, and we're grateful to bring them on. Rooms that have ceiling fans in them are so clutch. If you don't believe me, think of the last time that you stayed somewhere in a guest room or an Airbnb or wherever you were, and you didn't have a ceiling fan in the room where you were sleeping. And if the thermostat wasn't set right or it was broken, or you live there or you don't live there, so you don't feel comfortable in adjusting the thermostat, so you're trying to go to sleep and it's way too hot in there, and so you try the pulling the covers all the way off, and that doesn't work because you're used to having covers on you. So then you try the one leg out, one leg under the covers, and that works for a little bit, but you kind of wake up every 30 minutes. This is where a ceiling fan would come into play. But those rooms that don't have them, you're out of luck. That's why if you've ever been in a room with a ceiling fan, you know how crucial they are. And we just want to give a shout out to them. I personally have a couple rooms in my house that don't have a ceiling fan in them, and I regret to this day not figuring out how to install one in those rooms, because every room deserves a ceiling fan, and every ceiling fan deserves a room to be put in. And so we just want to give a shout out to rooms that do have a ceiling fan in them for being a sponsor of today's show. We couldn't do it without you, and we appreciate you for being a huge supporter of Useless Thoughts. Back to the show. The last thing I wanted to talk about on today's show is something that I've always found fascinating, particularly in regards to going to the grocery store. Now, sometimes if you go to the grocery store, if your parents were with you, maybe, I don't know if we were the only family that did this, but if your mom had to go into the grocery store to get something, then we would just be in the car, and Dad would just drive around the parking lot, circling it, waiting for Mom to finish, because she just had to run in real quickly, so there was no need to park. But the times where you have to take a long trip to the grocery store, and you're going to be in there a while, and you're buying that month's groceries, it's always funny to me that when people go to the grocery store, they will circle the parking lot for 5 to 10 minutes looking for the perfect parking spot, waiting for someone to pull out. They'll sit there and watch somebody with their buggy. They're coming out of the stores, and they've got their sights set on them, like, oh yeah, zeroing in on them, like, oh, I'm going to follow this person to their car, and I'm going to watch them load all this into their car, put all this pressure on them. And now they feel like they're in a hurry. And really, now that I think about it, this is probably why people don't put their buggies back in the little bin that they're supposed to be, because they feel so much pressure from these people, slowly inching their car up behind them, waiting for them to back out of their space. They feel in such a hurry and a rush, they probably just leave their buggy there just so that they can get the pressure off of them. But anyways, these people that do this, think about it. They're about to walk probably miles in the store. If you don't have a good game plan, you can walk several miles in a store, it feels like, zigzagging in and out of all the aisles. So you're going to do all this walking in the store, but parking 30 spots back as opposed to 5 spots back is just unheard of. No, I can't walk across the parking lot to the front doors. That's just too much. Now, I can walk all throughout the store, but I won't, I'm going to sit here and wait 15 minutes just to find this perfect spot so I don't have to walk too far in the parking lot. You're already walking. What does it matter? Walk, park in the back. Then you don't have to worry about someone scratching your car with their door or their buggy or something like that because you're way out of the way of everyone else. I'm a big believer, park in the first spot that you see when you get in the parking lot, and I think it's a lot simpler. And along those lines, the same thing with the gas stations. You see people will drive, all around looking to save 3 cents per gallon on gas because, what is that? If you have a 10-gallon tank, 3 cents a gallon, you save 30 cents on that entire transaction. And who knows, you probably used 30 cents of gas just driving around because you didn't want to go to the first gas station you saw. You probably wasted the 30 cents looking around for the gas. Folks, as I listen back to this episode, I can tell that these thoughts are more useless than I thought that they were. I'm not sure that I would have even listened to this myself if it were someone else making it, because these were completely useless. But I suppose that's the point. I don't think this episode will do anyone any good. I don't think that it provides much laughter. I don't think it provided much entertainment, but it did fit the show's description. So for that, we can say that we put in an honest day's work. I want to end today's show in light of this show being about driving. I want to end with some advice, and that is the general advice to be careful out on the roads, but particularly when it comes to using electronic devices while we're driving. A lot of us listen to podcasts, we talk on the phone, and if we're not careful, we can want to text, or we can want to look down at our phone even if we're not replying, just to see what it says. Remember that we are operating, as we mentioned earlier in the episode, we're operating these things that can and have taken the lives of many, some that we know, some we don't know, but it's taken the lives of so many. And these things that we drive deserve our attention and deserve our respect for the damage they can cause. So be careful when we're driving. Remember that we are carrying precious cargo, we are precious cargo, and others around us driving are precious cargo to someone else as well. So remember this, to be careful when we're driving and not be distracted while we're driving. Remember, show kindness to everyone, and let's make the world a better place.